So as I mentioned a little while ago, the much anticipated Dobbs decision that overturned Roe v. Wade was handed down last summer. Does anybody remember the date? Not you, but June the 24th. So on June the 24th, a historic day in our country. Well, just 3 days later, on June the 27th, the U.S. Supreme Court issued another opinion on another incredibly important case, which you probably didn't hear about at the time because Dobbs was kind of sucking up all the oxygen and all the media's attention, and with good reason, and our nation's attention as well. This other case centered around an 18-year Marine veteran who served as an assistant football coach for the Bremerton High School varsity football team in the state of Washington. Before he even coached his first game, Coach Joseph Kennedy made a commitment to God that he would give thanks at the conclusion of each game for what the players had accomplished and for the opportunity to be involved in their lives through football. After several years with no incidents at all, school officials at Bremerton High School suddenly disapproved of Coach Kennedy's practice and suspended and later fired him, claiming that his private prayer at midfield following football games was unconstitutional. As any good Marine would do in the face of an unwarranted attack, or any attack for that matter, Coach Kennedy stood his ground and challenged the school district, arguing that banning coaches from quietly praying just because they can be seen by the public is wrong, and in fact violates the free speech and free exercise clauses of the United States Constitution. 7 years later, following a multitude of defeats in lower courts, Coach Kennedy finally had his day before our nation's highest court. And this past summer, on June 27th, the United States Supreme Court vindicated Coach Joe Kennedy when it issued its opinion Kennedy versus Bremerton School District. Tonight, we are privileged to hear about this incredible warrior and about this incredible journey from the man himself. Please help me welcome Coach Joseph Kennedy.
Thank you, guys. At the beginning of this, I'm sitting here saying, where do I start? And I guess I'll just start at the beginning. So the whole Roe versus Wade actually kind of means something to me now. It didn't mean really anything to me growing up. But I was adopted at birth. My biological mom, she got pregnant, unwanted pregnancy. She had a decision to make. And by the grace of God, her family stepped in and said, no, abortion is not one of the things on the table. They put me up for adoption, and I was adopted at birth to a wonderful Catholic family that could not have kids. And like every good Catholic, they have to breed a whole lot. They're right up there with Mormons, I think they're competing. And they couldn't have kids, so they started adopting. And they adopted a girl. About a year later, they adopted myself. And then through the natural science or God or however you want to say it, they started having kids. And they started popping them out like crazy. They had 5 other kids, and it really started making a difference to us. And at about age 7, it's when it really started affecting my sister and myself. We sat down at the table, and our mom and dad told us that we were adopted. Well, that kind of made a lot of sense why there was always this weird friction between us. There was this disconnect. We could see it with the other kids, but we never could put our fingers on it. Well, with that, I turned into one of those little angry kids. I was a terror. I was absolutely the worst kid, I think, at Bremerton. I was kicked out of many schools. I was in and out of group homes and in foster homes. I attended a boys' home. So I was always in trouble. You would not want me around your kids, and definitely not dating your daughters. No lie there. But that is kind of funny because, I'll get to that. I don't know if anybody else has a 3rd grader that has been expelled from school. No one? Okay, I'm the only one. That was me. I got expelled in 3rd grade and it just progressed from there. And it really affected everything part of my life. I went to a Catholic school. I was always told that I contributed nothing to society. I was not wanted by anybody, and the only thing I was good for was hurting people. And when you're a kid, it bothers you, and you could go a couple different directions. Well, I just got mad, and I got really angry. I got really frustrated with life and everybody around me. And I wanted to hurt anybody that came close to me. So I did, by the grace of God, I look back on my life and all the times that I've been in trouble, all the fights that I got into, every single step of that way. Now I can see the puzzle pieces. Each one of those has God's fingerprints on each one of them. And those are the building blocks of making me who I am today. Now, being an angry little kid, and you didn't want me to date your daughters or sisters or anybody like that, I met my wife when we were both 9 years old, and yeah, so she was just moved into the house down the road, and my brother, foster brother, says, "Hey, there's this beautiful girl down the road. Let's go check her out. Tell her I like her." And I was like, "All right, yeah, I'm in." I walked up, and she's sitting on the front step, and she's just playing around with some dirt or something. And I walk up to her, and she looks up at me, and she does that brushing of the, back in the 70s, you got the long bangs, the Farrah Fawcett thing. She pushes her hair out of her eyes, and I was just dumbfounded. Absolutely jaw dropped. I looked like a complete idiot standing there in front of her. And she says, "Can I help you?" And I said, "Yeah, I want to marry you." "True story. Can't make this up." And she goes, "You're creepy." And she ran into the house, called her mom, we took off. Well, that was the first time my brother and I ever got in a fist fight. And I beat the tar out of him. And 31 years later, I finally reunited with that girl, and I married her, and that's who I'm married to today. So there is hope for some of those bratty little kids. I did have a lot of people that tried to sow into my life when I was growing up, especially at the boys' home. I think my parents went through the directory of all the people that I was foster family with. They had, I don't think anybody in the ABCs or Ds wanted to have anything to do with me, but the Freeds, the Farmers, and the Fords all took turns taking care of me. So they were working their way down the church directory. I ended up at a boys' home, and that's where God really started working in my life. I met some of the counselors there, and they just sowed everything they had, and just love and encouragement. Now, when you spread seeds on a rocky ground like my head, it doesn't really grow. But while I was there, I kind of tried on God. One of the guys challenged me, "Hey, why don't you just try on God like a Sioux?" And I said, "Well, I think I could do that." Well, it was really easy to do, to put on the God suit and walk around and say, "Look, I'm a Christian." And when you have the people surrounding you, you have devotions, you have the church, you have Bible studies, prayers at every meal, it definitely helps. But guess what? As soon as I left that boys' home, I went right back into what I was doing before. In and out of trouble, and finally I needed to do something with my life. I needed to make a decision. So I joined the Marine Corps. I thought that would be a great place to learn some discipline. I grew up with the John Waynes of the world, the men big men, I don't know where they are today, but, I wanted to be one of those. I always wanted to set that example. My uncle was a Marine, a big, scary guy, and I was like, I want to be like that. So I went into the Marine Corps, and I kind of found my calling at that time. It was pretty cool. I served in combat over in the first Desert Storm, and I served, and I just did my best to train young men and women to protect our country. So the Constitution meant a lot to me. Every time I took the oath of enlistment, and I know anybody who's in here who's served in the military or had people, when you feel that, when you take that oath of enlistment to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that means something to me. It makes my little hair stand up on my head. Even to this day. So I get out of the Marine Corps, I reunite with my current wife. I destroyed a couple marriages. I went through 2 other marriages, and great women, had a kid, and I absolutely destroyed it. Because I was immature, I was stupid, I was a sinner, and I did everything you could possibly do wrong. Now, that's where God starts kicking in, which is really cool. Because she grew up in the church. So she always was at church. Seemed like Sundays, Wednesdays, youth, this and that. She was always at church. And she would always ask me, every Sunday, you want to go to church with me? I'm like, nope. I'm going to watch football. I'm going to go work on my truck. I would rather do anything than sit in church. Well, that got kind of old after a while. And my kids, they were like, well, if he doesn't have to go, do I have to go? Now, when I heard that, I knew I was setting a bad example. And I didn't want to screw up this marriage. This is the girl I fell in love with. This is my first love, and I wanted to be definitely my last love. So I reluctantly went to church, sat there, you know, those cross-armed guys that are really mad looking, mean-mugging the preacher up there. That was me. The only thing this guy wants is my money. That's the only thing I heard. Well, because my wife was in a very abusive family growing up, she was abused when she was a kid. She got married into an abusive marriage, and her husband abused her for years. So she had a lot of defenses, and she just kept putting barriers up. And the closer I pushed to get close to her and try to break down those barriers, every one I took down, 4 more went up. And she was sabotaging us, trying to break us up, and I couldn't understand why. And so one day I was sitting in church, and you know how they play that cool music, you know, you're listening to it, and then all of a sudden I feel this I can't even describe what it is. Next thing I know, I'm standing up and I'm walking up to the what are they? Altars. Yes, see, I'm not a big church guy. So I go up to the altar and I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to the front, so I went way out to the side, and I just fell to my knees, and it's the first time I think I ever cried, as far as I remember. Because Marines don't cry, men don't cry, especially Marines. But I had no control over it. And I sat there sobbing, and I said, God, if you give me my wife, I will give you my life. And she saw that, she came up, and all of a sudden, all those barriers came down. And I lived with that I was going to walk with the Lord, and my family was going to walk with the Lord since that day. That is just amazing to have a little hellion like me to turn out to be, you know, this follower of God, which I didn't know what it meant. Things are going fine. My family's doing good. I think everything's going great. And then all of a sudden, I run into an athletic director of Bremerton High School. I just got out of the military, I started a new job, and he said, do you ever think about coaching? No. Heck no, I don't want to coach. I just spent 20 years training people and being married to the Marine Corps. I don't want to get back into something that's that big of a commitment. Well, God worked on my life. He worked on everything for a while, and my wife kept encouraging me, and this athletic director kept encouraging me. We need good coaches. We need coaches. So finally, I got promoted enough in my job that I just started where I could start making my own schedule, where I could, you know, get off at 3 o'clock every day for practice. I could take Friday nights off to go to the games, Mondays for the JV games. So football was my life. And I was sitting there saying, God, is this really what I want to do? I really didn't have a feeling that I wanted to do this. So I said, you know, well, if it happens, it happens. I got promoted, I worked out a schedule. All of a sudden, I have no more excuses. And so my wife says, hey, I want you to apply. We have interviews this week. I went in there on a Friday, and I interviewed for the school for the football position, and they offered me the job right there. And I said, like any good Christian, let me pray about it, right? And I really was, because I don't know anything about football. Nothing. Zero. I mean, I know how to watch it, and I know how to complain about it. I'm one of those, you know, what do they call them, reclining quarterbacks? Yeah, that's me. So I really had the decision to make. Not only that, I had kids in the high school. So both my daughter and my son were in the high school. And my youngest son was in middle school. Now, my kids would do anything to get away from me. They actually liked going to school because they didn't have to be with me. Because Marines are a little rough around the edges, especially with kids. I'm not good with them. Thank God you guys are good parents, because I was not one of those. I was sitting there and I said, let me think about it, let me pray about it, and talk over with my family. We talked about it, and then in the middle of the night, it was either Saturday or Sunday, I can't remember which day it was, but I'm flipping through the channels at about midnight. Now there's nothing on. There's 975 channels or whatever it is now? Nothing on any of them. So I'm flipping through and all of a sudden this football movie comes on. It was facing the Giants. Right? Now, I think their budget was $207? Right? But I tell you, it was like the hand of God reached down through the TV set, punched me in the gut, and for the second time in my life, I fell to my knees, bawling my eyes out. I actually felt the calling. Now, we do a lot of prayers, and God speaks to us sometimes through one way or another. This was the first time that God actually showed up and, hey, here's your sign, right? So I did. I said, I'm all in. Right there is where I said, I'm crying on my living room floor for this TV, just like the coach on TV. I sat there and said, God, I will give you praise and glory after every single game, win or lose. And I'm going to do it right there on the battlefield. And that was my commitment to God. And that's how the whole thing started. Back in 2008, I started coaching. Everything was great. I prayed before games with everybody. All the coaches prayed. It was just a thing that everybody did. But after games, I was giving my commitment. And for months, I sat there and took a knee. And I said a prayer of thanks. It was really quick, 30 seconds, because I'm not a great prayer kind of guy. I mean, a couple of you guys prayed for me earlier today, and I was like, man, I wish I could pray like that. Those are some good words. I'm more of the, God, you're awesome. Thanks for these guys. I didn't punch anybody. They didn't kill anybody. So, thanks. Thank you for letting me be part of it. Well, after a few months, the kids started noticing that I was the last one off the field, and they said, Coach, what are you doing out there? I said, I was just giving thanks. I was telling God how awesome you guys are. And they said, can we join? I was like, well, heck yeah. This is America. You can do whatever you want to do. So they started coming out. And over the years, it grew. Now, depending on the game, if you lose by 60 points, which has happened, they are not very grateful and they don't want to thank God for it. Maybe to thank God that He was finally over and put us out of our miseries, but that was about it. And same thing on the other side. If you win by 60 points, they just lose their mind and they just want to celebrate and they forget about everything else. But I never did. It was always giving God the thanks, win or lose. Just not a problem. Went on for 8 years. The last year I was coaching, or a couple years before, they started, my captains came up to me and said, Coach, can we invite the other team? Because Bremerton's not a big town. A lot of kids come to our school and move into the other areas and they go to other schools. It probably happens everywhere in America. But all these kids grew up together. They played pee-wees together, middle school together, and then, they all just kind of go in their own ways. So they wanted to pray with the other kids. And I said, hey, this is your team. Again, this is America. You can do whatever you want to do. They invited the other team. And then last year, we had every single team in our entire league that joined us out there on the football field for prayer. In Kitsap County, that is really cool. Because I don't know if you guys know anything about the West Coast, or left coast, however you want to say it. It's pretty jacked up over there. They don't have the same moral standards and the family stuff and everything that you have here. The South down here is awesome. If you want to just a wake-up call, go see the safe injection sites up in Seattle, where our tax money is paying to shoot people up with heroin. That's what taxpayers are doing up there, and paying for homeless people to come and waste money. It's terrible up there. So I thought I was doing a good thing. I really thought, even prayer things was something that was cool. It was good. When it moves, I was going to do it. So that 8th year, one of the guys asked me, he said, so who came against you? Who was the one who said something bad? And I said, nobody. This actually came from a compliment. One of the educators from another school saw us play in our game, and saw us afterwards taking a knee and both teams coming together and having that moment. And he just had to call up the school and say, hey, Mr. Principal, I just want to tell you what your football program is doing is really awesome. And of course, when you get a compliment like that, the first thing you want to do is call the lawyers and throw an investigation, right? So that's what they did. Now, the lawyer group, I don't blame the school a whole lot because I love these people. These people are really close to my family. We've been together for almost a decade. Our kids were there. We were so invested into Bremerton, and we really believed in it. So this was a hard thing to go through. But it was their lawyer group. Now, their lawyer group represents all of Washington State. Now, let that sink in. You think how many schools that is in Washington State alone that is run by this same group who absolutely want the separation of church and state to mean that church has no place, no religion in schools, period, or in a public square, anywhere. That's a serious, crazy thought. But that's what they're doing. That's exactly what their motive was. So we went back and forth. We were trying to work it out. The superintendent's a really good friend of mine. I felt bad for him. He went to the same church as I did, which made it really awkward on Sundays. You can imagine that. And, it was a strain on my family. Not to mention that this was my football team. I've given, 8 years to these guys. I mean, I'm only in their life for this long. And they really mean something to me. This was my redemption, my penance. This is me paying back for all the hurt that I did growing up. All the things that I did wrong. All the times that I needed a parent around or somebody, some adult, even if they smacked me upside the head, which is what I really needed. But just to be there, I never had that. So this was my job. It was what I was going to do. And that's why I was coaching. That's why they hired me, is to look after the kids. All the other coaches could focus on the X's and O's, and I just focused on the people that were doing the X's and O's. It was a great relationship. So we fought back and forth. It went just really south when the lawyers got involved. I hate lawyers. I really, that's the next divorce I want is from my lawyers, because I think my term with the lawyers, 8 years, yeah, that was about both of my first 2 marriages. So I think I've been married to First Liberty Institute longer than I was for my other family. So these guys mean a lot to me now. So I'm sitting there trying to figure out how do we get out of this. The school gave me a directive that says, you can pray even when you're on duty as long as it doesn't affect your job performance. That's not a problem. It doesn't. The school only has one policy. It says you cannot encourage nor discourage kids in prayer. Well, that's what I was doing. I don't care if they come out or not. This is my thing. If they come, cool. But I'm not going to tell them not to either. Because if I tell them to come out, that's just as bad as telling them that they can't come out. And I would never do that. That's just un-American. So they said, well, we just want you in the second letter. We just want you to stop praying with the team. And I was like, well, that's unfortunate, but okay. I mean, your school, your rules. Who am I to tell you? And I just wanted to coach. That's the only thing I wanted to do. And that went along fine until the other school. I went to take my knee. My team went off to go do their fight song. And I got surrounded by a football team. And when I stood up, it's the opposing team. And I'm like, what do you do with that? I can't tell these kids not to come out. So the school, in their infinite wisdom, said, oh, just stop praying altogether. And I said, well, that's not going to happen. All communication broke down. The school, their lawyers said, you can't come and talk to us anymore. It has to go through lawyers. So I was really hamstrung, and it was tearing everybody up. And that's where I had to draw the line. And it was a tough line, because I was weak in the flesh. I wanted to just give in. I really did. I didn't want to sit here and fight with the school, the people that I liked, the people that I've worked with for almost a decade. This is putting pressure on everybody. My coaching staff, my family, my kids, my wife, everybody around me. And it just was driving me nuts. I just wanted to just fade off and go, okay, you guys are right. But then there was that little, because being a Christian, you can pray anywhere. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be on a football field. It doesn't have to be in church. Wherever the heck you want to. I think it's in the Bible somewhere that says to pray without ceasing or something? That sounds biblical, right? She's over here saying, yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah, I told you I'm not really good at Bible stuff. Love God, love others, and I suck at those. I fail at those every day, but that's the whole basis of my Christianity, I guess you could say. So we were fighting, we couldn't figure it out, and I had to make a decision between my job and my team, the thing that I really loved, my actual calling. That is a horrible place for any American to be. The Christian side of me was like, well, I don't care, it doesn't affect me at all. But there was that Marine inside of me that said, hell no. There is no way on God's green earth. I fought for the Constitution. I will fight till the day I die for the Constitution. And it actually did. And it really did. It cost me just about everything. I was about to get a divorce from my wife. This was so hard on our family. Just really quick, it was so hard on my family. My wife and I, we were fighting every single day. She couldn't understand why I was doing what I was doing. She couldn't understand why. She just knew me as this angry little kid that she grew up with, and I was defiant, and nobody's going to tell Kennedy what to do. And I'm like the guy, you're not the boss of me, So she thinks I'm just being defiant, but she doesn't understand that God has called me to do this, and I can explain it. How do you explain to somebody you're calling to God? I'm not equipped for those things. So I'm sitting there, my wife's bawling her eyes out, and we're at the end. And I'm getting ready to walk out of the house. She's crying on the bed. I start walking out, and I get a phone call. My phone goes off, and I hate these stupid phones. But my lawyers were really active at that time with the courts and everything. So when my lawyers call, it was something important. And I look, and I'm getting ready to take a step down the stairs, and it's the guy who was in Facing the Giants. Now that, and I mean, I don't even know how God has a sense of humor, but his timing is so perfect for him. Horrible for me. So I'm looking at this video, and I'm trying to walk down the stairs. I fall down the stairs, I break the banister, make all this noise, I'm tumbling down. My wife comes running out, she's wiping the tears. Oh my God, are you all right? Are you all right? And I'm handing her my phone, and I'm just, third time, I'm bawling my eyes out. God, tough guy, huh? The only thing I talk about right now is crying. You guys, the inner workings of Kennedy, you guys all know my weakness now. It's God. And Facing the Giant guys. So the Facing the Giant guys, I handed my phone to my wife, and she said, do you want me to call 911? And I'm trying to communicate, and between my sobs, I'm just, play. And she sat there beside me and listened to the message from the guy, the head coach, Irwin's, is that the Kendricks? Kendricks, right? Man, I get those two brothers mixed up. They're always mixing me up. But it was that guy standing on the 50-yard line at the place where they shot Facing the Giants. And it was an encouragement to me and my family. Right as the moment I was getting ready to get in my car and leave my family. Coincidence? Well, it's got to be a coincidence. I mean, how can you plan that kind of timing any crazier than that? That's just beyond crazy. But that saved my marriage right there. We sat on that stairwell and we bawled our eyes out. And she finally understood. It was like the light came on in her eyes, and God just, I don't know, removed the scales from her eyes. That's biblical, right? Come on, you guys gotta give me some nods. You can't just laugh. Right? Yeah, there she is. I'm gonna look at this lady every time. She knows a lot. So she just understood it, and we were instantly healed, and we have never been stronger, ever. We have fought. So we fought the system for, now you say it was 7 years, but it was in 2015 season, and this is the 2023 season. That's 9 football seasons. That's a long fight. And my family stood beside me the whole entire way. My wife is a saint. I wish she was here because she'd be all embarrassed. I love every second of it. So that's where we were. That's what happened. And you guys heard it. I was praying alone, all by myself, and they ended up terminating me. Well, they suspended me halfway through the season. At the end of the season, they elected not to renew my contract with a great big thing on my evaluation that says, do not rehire. Now, I don't know about you, but when it says that, you're not going to get rehired if you apply for a job, right? And we never had to apply. We just rolled over every single year. Based on our evaluations, it would say, recommended for a rehire, you wanted to come back, and we would just pass it through. That's the way it went. So I ended up losing my job. I ended up fighting for all of this time. And I tell you, it sucked to lose. We lost at the district level. The Court of Appeals went to the Supreme Court. They kicked it back, but gave us a roadmap. So the Supreme Court takes what? They get about 8,000 submissions every year, and they took 63 last year, right? 63. And so those are not very good odds. I should play the lottery because I think I would do quite well. The Supreme Court said, we're not going to take the case, but we're very concerned with what the lower district said. So we went back, did all the depositions, went through all the trial, went to the district court, went to the Ninth Circuit. Ninth Circuit not only doubled down, I think they quadrupled down. Now, the Ninth Circuit's a little kooky. They call it the Ninth Circus for a reason, because it's really kooky. But this judge, it was a 3-judge panel. This judge, the sitting judge, who was appointed by Reagan, mind you, so he's supposed to be a Republican. He's supposed to be a good conservative judge. But by chance, he happened to be a former lawyer for school districts. No conflict of interest there, right? And he actually wrote, I think it was a 93-page opinion on what a bad coach I was, what a bad person I was. And not only that, I already knew I was a bad person. And, coaching is, you have to go one way or another. But he actually wrote in his opinion that I was a bad Christian. He quoted the Bible in there and says, the way I understand the Bible and the way I pray is that you will not pray like the hypocrites. You go into your closet. And I'm like, really? A sitting judge is telling me that I'm a bad Christian and telling me how I'm supposed to pray. In America. That's just bizarre to me. Well, that's the cool thing about God, is because he said something so stupid that the Supreme Court said, that's really stupid, we'll take that case. So God worked it out just the way he intended it to. Him and I are going to have a conversation about his timing, his methods, but I give all the glory to him because I would not be standing here today if there wasn't, 1, family involved with it, 2, my family involved, my school family, my lawyer family, and the best part is all of you. Every single one of you that prayed. Now, we pray about a lot of stuff, a whole lot of stuff. Global hunger, now it's global warming or climate change or global transgenderism. I don't know what the heck it is today. Something. It's always something. But we pray for a lot of these things and you never see God really stepping in and doing something. Well, he did it with Roe v. Wade. That was pretty cool. That was amazing. First time in most of our lifetimes that's happened. The other thing is with our case, there was this case really horrible that was called Lemon versus Kurtzman or something, some lawyer stuff. It was where that the reasonable observer, if they thought that I was doing something, against the Establishment Clause, then you can't do it. Now, the district court, they said anybody, not only was I a bad Christian and a bad person, just smeared my reputation, didn't go by the facts. He made his own narrative, but he sat there and he said any display of religion is not allowed on our school campuses or in the government. Now let that sink in. No visible, any demonstrative things, any demonstration of faith. You think about people who wear a cross around their neck? I think about the little lunch lady that, wears the crosses. I think about Jewish people who wear the little yarmulke thing. I think about, what's a big turban thing that they wear, the hijab? You think about every single religion in America. Now, I know who God is. He's pretty cool. Now, there's a lot of other people that don't believe in what I believe, but I would fight to the death to support and defend their rights. So this affected millions and millions of Americans. I thought it was just about some idiot coach who wanted to thank God, and it turned into this giant thing, and it overturned Lemon. Now there's 7,000 cases that for the First Amendment or for the Ten Commandments, anytime they took down crosses, all of those have to be looked at, repealed, and taken back off the books and put back up the books. ADF, who's a good friend of mine, First Liberty Institute, there's 1 million of them that are out there, isn't enough. You have to be the ones to do it. Family Policy is one of the best and biggest groups that I have ever met in the United States. I've traveled everywhere, it seems like, over the past 9 football seasons. And you guys have been the absolute best. Your prayers absolutely 100% paid off. It was a blessing to my family. You guys have written opinions, the Minkus briefs for us, and you have me coming here and telling my story and sharing it with everybody. This is my chance to thank every one of you for everything you guys done. This was not my fight. This was an American fight. This was everybody in this room's fight. The guy said about his kids, his grandkids. I already have grandkids. A lot of people in here have grandkids. Imagine what it's going to be like. This is a cool time to be alive because God is really working now. We just got to get off our butts and do it. And that's what I love about you guys. Sitting here is the best people in the world. I love you guys. And I want to thank every single one of you. Your time, your money, your efforts went to something good. If you can't see the fruits of your labors every single day, you can look right up here and know that every dime that was ever spent, fought to defend the Constitution, has paid off. And God answered that prayer. So I'm reinstated as a coach, right? And hopefully the 2023 football season will be a very interesting one. So that's all I got until John comes up here and interrogates me. I know I talked really a long time, and I want to open it up to him to ask me a bunch of questions. And if we have time, if any of you guys have questions, I would love to. This is my favorite part because I get to talk to all of you guys. Thanks, buddy.
Well, Coach, thanks so much for sharing. There's one big item you left out that we've got to tackle that I've got to ask you about. Who is Denise?
Oh, yeah. I didn't tell you about that. I told you my wife, Denise. I didn't say her name, but my wife. And I said, we've been invested in the school. Yeah, she was employed by the school district during that time.
And what was her position?
She was the HR director.
The HR director.
Now, let that sink in. I was suing my wife because she was the one having to fire me. Intense fellowship is what we call it. That's why we almost got a divorce. You can't make up this stuff. Are you kidding me? The HR director for the school district is my wife, and everyone's firing me, and I'm the one suing them? Weird sense of humor.
And Coach called it intense fellowship, and I think that's because he was living outside in a tent. At least that's what you told me.
Yes. Maybe a cold line in my car.
No, but just consider that. That not only was there just natural stress from this situation that was very present in the home, but Denise was an active, somewhat active party, and certainly by being employed by the school system was right in the middle of things. So that certainly didn't make things much easier. Yeah, so that's incredible. I know that you said in your comments that there were times where you just wanted to give in, and how easy that would have been. And I think it's incredible, the commitment that you had to that. But talk about that a little bit. I mean, the temptations that you had to just say, look, I mean, you battled this for 9 football seasons. It would have been so easy at any time along that path to just say, okay, I've done my deal, I'm out. What kept you in the fight?
Well, there was that little kid, like I said, God put his fingerprints on my entire life, so that angry little kid who always fought was prepared for this. I was a Marine, I was prepared for battle. We just never retreat, we never surrender, we were those kind of guys. But more importantly, I just didn't give up for my team and for every American that's out there. How would I have been a coach? Could you imagine me trying to face those kids? I tell these kids to almost kill themselves every Friday night on the football field. I demand everything from them. I don't care if their feelings are hurt. I don't care if they have a place to live. I don't care if they don't have food to eat. I don't care if they broke up with Susie or whatever. There's always something with a teenager. But how would I have been if I would have said, oh, because this has been an inconvenient for me and it's caused me a little bit of pain, a little bit of suffering and, inconvenience in my life. Am I going to give up? What kind of example would I have been? Not only for my team, all the people that I coached before. That's a lot of kids. And how would I be as a husband if I would have given up? That makes me just a failure in every way, shape, and form. This was a fight I had to fight, and I was going to set an example for my kids, my team, and little did I know for all of America.
Well, thank you. And you obviously didn't fight this fight alone.
Yeah.
First Liberty Institute is a national legal organization that represented you. Talk a little bit about how you got connected with First Liberty and the role that they played in this long-standing battle.
When everything first started, I was getting bombarded by everything. I had, reporters calling me every day. I had a million lawyers calling, hey, we'll represent you. I had tons of death threats. I had everybody calling me. And I don't know if you guys know the name Jay Sekulow. Yeah. He called me up and said, hey, this is Jay Sekulow. I'd like to represent you. I'm like, no. And hung up on him. I didn't want to have anything to do with lawyers. I thought we could work all this out ourselves. Well, by the grace of God and His infinite wisdom and His timing and everything, is that one of my coaches that I coached with went to high school with a guy who became a lawyer, saw what was going on, and they got together, they talked, and then my coach called me and said, hey, I got my buddy, I play football with him, he's a lawyer. Is it all right if he calls you? Well, a friend of a friend, heck yeah, I'll talk to this guy. So he calls me up and says, hey, I'm AJ Ferrati. I live in Oklahoma. I have no affiliation with anybody, but I happen to be at a law conference and I'm sitting next to First Liberty, who that's all they do is religious freedom. Would you be willing to talk to them? Now you think about the alignment on that alone for a lawyer to be in a room sitting next to the same people that ended up representing Providence, I don't know, what coincidence. I'm sure there's a word for it, but I don't know what it is. But that's how we got involved, and they stuck by me and fought with me every step of the way.
The disdain for lawyers is not an official or unofficial position of the North Carolina Family Council. Just to be absolutely clear. With all due respect.
I do love them, and I love to hate them too.
So, just for a couple minutes, we'd love to open the floor up to any questions that anybody might have.
And you can't ask me the wrong one because I think I can ask everything. I'm an open book.
Any questions for Coach Kennedy? Yes? I'm going to repeat the question so everybody can hear it. How many of your former players have come to you to offer support for your stand?
Just about every single one of them. Absolutely. Matter of fact, not this past Christmas before, one of my football players, one of my team captains from the first years I was coaching, called me up and said, hey coach, I'm going to get married, I want your blessing. And I said, okay, cool. who are you marrying? And he started laughing the goopy. I'm marrying, no. And I'm like, excuse me? I'm marrying Taylor. Taylor who? You're not talking about Taylor, my cheerleader, are you? Yeah. And then he invited me up. He wanted me to perform the service, so I flew up and performed their service. So I've been involved with their lives very much. They've all been supporting me. I challenge everybody, all the news. They were like, oh yeah, you had people that were complaining or you were forcing kids. I said, I coached for 8 years. I had about 60 kids on my team each year. That's a lot of opportunities to find one kid. And I challenge them. They couldn't find a single one that felt pressured or even thought that this was something of a big deal. This was absolutely nothing to them. So they were absolutely 100% on my side and still are to this day.
Did you have a question? Yes.
What through all this tribulation, what about yourself? Second question, what's your record?
Okay, so the first question is, through all this tribulation, what did you learn about yourself that you didn't know? And the second question is, what was your record on the football field?
I would say the thing that I learned most is my relationship with God and what the family actually meant. Because I never had a family. My whole life was a train wreck up to that point. Really relying on God, that was a huge foundation. My roots were very, very deep. Oh, also I wanted to say, another thing that I found out, you know the lady who put me up for adoption at birth? Met her at age 47 and her and her husband they adopted me at age 47 and now I'm a Powell. So Joseph Anthony Kennedy Powell. So my biological mom reconnected, readopted me, and now we're family again. How crazy is that? Varsity was not good. But the year that we did good, I ended up having a blue mohawk and a blue beard. So we made bets with the team. They would be allowed to cut my hair and do whatever they wanted, to get them motivated. But for GB, we won more games than we lost. I never kept track of it didn't matter to me. As long as they gave 100% on those nights. That's the only thing I asked from them.
Thank you. Any other questions out there? Yes, ma'am.
Are you back coaching at the same school?
Are you back coaching at the same school?
I will be, yes. I am going back to Bremerton. I'm in negotiations. Well, the school just reinstated me. I just got my letter last week. I've been in negotiations or talking with the head coach to find out what my responsibilities are. When is the season? When are we going to get together? What clinics do we have? There's a lot of unknowns that are out there right now that we got to work through. But as far as I know, I'm part of the Bremerton Knights football staff now, so that's pretty cool.
Yes, sir.
Did you get back pay for the?
does he get back pay?
Man, wouldn't that be great? I don't know if you know anything about coaches. We figured out every year that I coached, for how much time I put into it, we make about 7 cents an hour. And you did the math, it doesn't lie. But no, I didn't ask for anything. They had to pay my lawyer fees, so they worked that stuff out. I didn't ask for a single dime. This was all about getting my job back because it was wrongful termination as far as I considered it. I did nothing wrong. So I asked for my job and the right to be able to pray after a football game.
So I have a copy of the Supreme Court's opinion in this case right here, and I want to read 2 excerpts to you from this. And the first one I'd like for you to respond to. This is discussing sort of the circumstances in one of the situations that you found yourself in. And this is the United States Supreme Court in an opinion that says this. Mr. Kennedy further felt pressured to abandon his practice of saying his own quiet, on-field post-game prayer. Driving home after a game, however, Mr. Kennedy felt upset that he had broken his commitment to God by not offering his own prayer. So he turned his car around and returned to the field. By that point, everyone had left the stadium, and he walked to the 50-yard line and knelt to say a brief prayer of thanks. That's our United States Supreme Court just kind of laying out the facts of this situation. What kind of was going through your heart and your mind at that time that they describe in this opinion?
I was really dumbfounded that they actually got down to that level. I think about the Supreme Court, they look at these global things, abortion and public execution, Second Amendment, First Amendment stuff. So to get down to that specific detail about some high school football coach in Bremerton, Washington, that's got to be a God thing. There's no other explanation for it. I think, if you like Trump or not, that guy put a lot of judges in. But that was the best thing he did, is put all those in, and they were appointed not only by Trump, but by God. And they got down to just that much of a detail, is they knew I turned around and drove in the middle of the night back to say a prayer. That's on the record, that's in the Supreme Court, knowing that exactly what I did down to that level. That is just amazing.
It really is remarkable. And I want to read the conclusion of the opinion. And think about this in terms of not only Coach Kennedy, but what it means for everybody sitting in this room and what it means for everybody in our nation that's not sitting in this room. Respect for religious expressions is indispensable to life in a free and diverse republic, whether those expressions take place in a sanctuary or on a field, and whether they manifest through the spoken word or a bowed head. Here, a government entity sought to punish an individual for engaging in a brief, quiet, personal religious observance, doubly protected by the free exercise and free speech clauses of the First Amendment. And the only meaningful justification of the government offered for its reprisal rested on a mistaken view that it had a duty to ferret out and suppress religious observances, even as it allows comparable secular speech. The Constitution neither mandates nor tolerates that kind of discrimination. Mr. Kennedy is entitled to summary judgment on his First Amendment claims. The judgment of the Court of Appeals is reversed. Coach Kennedy, you're not only a Marine, but you are a warrior. And we thank God that you fought this battle, that the Supreme Court recognized what you did, and they honored you, and God honored you for it. And to God be the glory. Amen.